This will be a bonus to the Illuminati card game series, and I can't believe it's been well over 4 months since we even talked about these cards or covered these cards in general, but now I would just like to give you a bonus and even more cards that we will cover and go over today. And the first one that we're going to be covering says, "And stay dead. Play this card immediately after any group has been destroyed or discarded by any player. It requires an action from a magic group. The destroyed group is gone forever. No card or special ability can revive it." Now, what's very interesting and suspicious about this card in particular is that it looks like somebody and it resembles someone that's been in the mainstream media just recently. And that someone just so happens to be Julian Assange. And it's just interesting because we've been seeing him all over mainstream media when it comes to Hillary Clinton and the email scandal and everything. Very interesting and suspicious indeed. Are these cards trying to tell you something? I might have talked about this card before, but what's interesting about this card is that it actually shows up twice and it has two different pictures, and it's called Air Magic. And it says, "Play this card to help protect the place against any disaster except an earthquake or volcano. The power of the place is tripled for this one defense. Playing this card is an action for a magic group. Alternatively, you may sacrifice the top plot card from your deck to power this card. Discard it without looking at all." Now, what's very interesting about this card is that it reminds us of what? Weather control and weather modification. And your government even has documentation to prove that they not only modify the weather and control the weather, but they also modify it in order to what? Poison the air with chemtrails and use it against our benefits in order for what? Depopulation. Now, I thought this card was very interesting indeed, and if you have something to add to this card or any of the cards, please do comment below in the description box. But it says 18.5 minute gap, and it says play this card immediately after someone else plays a plot card. That card is canceled but not discarded, instead added to your own hand. And what this card really means and what it's really alluding to and talking about is how they control the media and how everything is controlled and centralized under the media. The Zionists are the ones who are controlling everything, and everything is staged, predicted, and planned ahead of time. The elite and the Illuminati, they are telling you each and every day their plans. They're telling you exactly what they're about to do, and they've even told you what they're going to do 17 years ahead of time. Because is it a surprise or a coincidence that this card just so happens to remind us of something very familiar? It says Al Amarja. Conspiracy is in the very air of Al-Amarja. Its owner is immune to the I Lied card. However, its rulers use their arcane powers mainly to guard themselves. If Al-Amarja or its master or puppet is struck by a disaster, each undrawn plot card you discard before the die roll adds +4 to your defense. And notice how the watch here, it just so happens to show 1205. And this man just so happens to resemble someone very familiar, and this event just so happens to resemble a very familiar event indeed. And this event is, of course, the Aurora shooting that took place on July 20th, 2012, allegedly in Colorado. How did they know about that 17 years ahead of time? How did they know? Just like how did they know about 9/11? How did they know about Lady Gaga? How did they know about Mr. Obama becoming president? How did they know about these things? How did they know? Is that just a mere coincidence, or are they literally telling you ahead of time? Now, this card says annual convention. Tragically, the organization's yearly meeting was in the path of the destruction. And what this card immediately reminded me of was Bohemian Grove, when all the men and the top elite men gathered together and they sacrificed to Molech, the giant owl, and fire worship. And they probably have women whom they sacrifice and fornicate with as well. But don't worry, that's not the only convention that they do that in, because they also do it behind closed closed doors, and other disgusting demonic rituals. Just ask them. I'm telling you, it goes much deeper than you think. Now, this card says Bavarian Illuminati. Each turn, you may declare one of your attacks privilege. Power 10 out of 10. Special goal, control a total power of 50 or more, counting Bavaria's own power. And of course, we know that this card symbolizes and represents the Bavarian Illuminati, and how the Illuminati was founded back in 1776, and how it was founded with a bunch of elite white men at the very top. And we know that this year is very interesting indeed, because this year is the 240th year since the Illuminati has even started. I wonder what that means symbolically speaking. Now, I've probably talked about this card, but I would just like to reiterate it once again. It says Big Media gives +4 to any attempt to control or destroy other media, may aid or oppose any attack made by or against any other media group. And when we know that it says big media, we know darn well what it's talking about, because it's talking about what media and surveillance and spying, Big Brother's watching you. Because if you ever notice your smart TV is actually watching and recording you, have you ever wondered why that red light on your TV never goes out even when you turn it off? Because it's actually recording you and your house. No, this is not a conspiracy. Just look at all the fusion centers that the DHS has, and just look at the FBI, and they'll tell you all about it. Now, this card is very suspicious because it shows us Winston Churchill, and it says blood, toil, tears, and sweat. Discard any one New World Order card now in play. This requires the action of media groups with the combined power of at least 4. This card may be played at any time. Now, what this card is really showing you is what they're giving you, the illusion of the world power and a world leader, because we know darn well that all these world leaders are all agents for the Illuminati. And we know that they're hired and bought and purchased by the Illuminati, including Mr. Obama, including Mr. Trump, and including Miss Clinton. They're all purchased ahead of time, and they all are to fulfill the plans of the Illuminati. You never had a voice to begin with. Your vote never counted to begin with, and that is just the darn truth. But what these world leaders also do, and what they're trying to do, is start war any single way they can, because yes, the Zionists, they fund both sides of the war, and we even see that today with World War III erupting with Russia and Turkey and Syria and the Middle East. It's funded by both sides. Don't believe the propaganda of mainstream media. Now, this card says bodyguard. Play this card after any type of assassination. It becomes an automatic failure. Now, this card could represent a whole lot of things, but I think that this card really is trying to hint at what more spying, because every time you see bodyguards and paparazzi all over the place, it's just a central hub for more spying and more detecting and more everything else, and we see that all over the place, especially in places such as Hollywood, or should I say Hollywood. Now, this card says Boy Sprouts, and it says whenever the Boy Sprout helps to bring relief to any devastated location, you may draw a plot card. For purposes of bringing relief, they have a power of 12. Now, when you look at this picture, when you look at the boy in the picture, first of all, you see him holding up this satanic hand gesture, which is very interesting because you see that hand gesture being held up on many religious symbols and icons, including the Baphomet. But not only that, when you look closely, it looks like he's what? Deprogrammed and mind control, because they want to come after your children, and that is why they have these cartoons, because what? They're programming your children at a young age to think a certain way, act a certain way, and talk a certain way. It's all programming. It's all about mind control. Now, this card says Death Mask. Whoever wears it can see a slightly different world through its staring eye holes, and when the mask is removed, the different world is the true one. And of course, this sounds just like the Matrix. It sounds like what? Two different worlds, because you're the one living in a fantasy if you continue to listen to what your government tells you, and if you continue to believe that, oh, everything's okay, and oh, nothing to worry about, and oh, life is going to go on and business as usual. It's time to wake up and take off the mask and see see the world around you and see what's about to take place, because you could be wearing the death mask and you may not even know it. Now you see this word all throughout this card game, and it says F Nord, and it says play this card immediately after any die roll you make. You may discard that roll and try again. Now if you look up the word and the meaning of this word, you'll see that it was coined in about 1965, and you'll see that it has to do with, and it ties to, conspiracy and purposefully misinforming the public, disinformation. And no, I'm not making this up. You can go look it up, you can Google search it, and you'll see exactly why it's there. But that's exactly what your government and your elite are doing. Just look at CNN, ABC, and all those other alphabet soups. Disinformation. They literally get paid to disinform us every single day, to spread their propaganda, because they want to make us feel a certain way and think a certain way and trigger a certain reaction about other groups of people. Just look at Islamic terror, but they'll never tell you who the real terrorists are, which are those Zionists at the very top. Now this card says Freaking the Mundanes. Place an action token on each of your weird groups which does not already have one. This card may be played at any time. This card does not benefit groups which are suffering from the effect of any card or special ability that prevents them from getting action tokens. Now what I thought was interesting about this card specifically is how they're trying to glorify and trying to make what seems weird normal. They're trying to normalize it any single way they can. And also in our culture today, you're starting to see more of an uptick with the normalization of tattoos and piercings and nose rings and everything else, as well as mohawks, just as you see in the picture here today, because there is always an agenda attached behind it. And while it may seem like nothing, anytime your government pushes something that becomes mainstream, or anytime your government starts to offer free stuff, there's always something going on ahead of time. There's always something more subliminal that's going on. Now this card says good polls, and it says play this card at any time. Until the beginning of your next turn, the power and resistance for all your groups of any chosen alignment is tripled for defense only. And we even see that with the polls, because they try to tell us that, oh, this candidate's winning, or oh, that candidate's ahead of this one, just like we see with Mr. Trump and Miss Clinton, even though it really doesn't matter. The elections are rigged. Just ask Mr. George W. Bush from the 2000 elections, and he'll tell you all about that. He even told you on a news report that he would, in fact, win the elections. How did he know that unless presidents are selected and not elected? Now this one says celebrity spokesman. Play this card at any time except during an attack. Link any personality you control to any organization that is not secret or government and has no opposed alignments. The power of the personality is increased to 4. The bonus is lost if either card is captured or destroyed. And immediately I thought of what? Corruption with Hollywood or Hollywood. There's a lot they're not telling you, just like they're not telling you what really goes on behind closed doors. Because if you even want to become a celebrity, or if you even want to get into the Hollywood industry, there's a whole lot that you have to do. You have to keep a bunch of secrets. Keep the secrets. That is the game of the Illuminati. But not only do you have to keep the secrets, you also have to perform very demonic, satanic rituals in order to get to the top and become a Freemason. Just look at LeBron James and all those others who are at the very top, and even certain celebrities and childhood celebrities, but they can't tell you any of this stuff. Keep the secrets. Now, of course, we automatically think of Hillary Clinton when we see this card, because it says chain letter. You make 500 copies and in 3 weeks you own Monaco. And we think of chain letters, and that's all we've been hearing about too in the news and recently all over is, oh, Hillary Clinton and the email scandal and blah, blah, blah. And then it talks about playing this card at any time except during a privileged attack, placing it over any straight group. The target is paralyzed immediately. It cannot spend action tokens and cannot use any special ability or linked resource. But notice how it says its puppets are unaffected, but it cannot get new ones. Control of the target does not count toward any goal. To free the target, either remove its straight alignment or spend an action from its master or any Illuminati. And it seems as though anytime anyone is linked with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, there's always a scandal indeed. How did they know about that? How many years ahead of time? But this card is also interesting when it says New World Order, chicken in every pot. And there's so much symbolism on this card, including the phoenix rising out of the ashes. And then we have a clock right here. But it also says world trade is thriving. Everybody is rich and happy. Increase the power of all banks in all coastal places by 2. Decrease the power of all violent groups by 1. This card replaces any blue NWO card that is in play. And when I automatically look at this card, I think of New York. And when it says World Trade, it automatically reminds me of the World Trade Center in New York. Just so happens to be a coastal city. And we know throughout this game, they mention coastal areas and coastal cities. Indeed, especially when they say everybody is rich and happy. But will that be the case when it comes to the planned economic collapse? Probably not. Now this card says Clipper Chip. All government groups in your power structure gain the ability to listen in on phone conversations worldwide, only for legitimate law enforcement, of course. Oh my goodness, they're telling you so much truth indeed. And by the way, how did they know all about this? Because this was well before cell phones were really popularized. Of course, there were phones back then, but it's interesting because that's all we're seeing now in the mainstream media and in the news, with talks about the RFID chip and chips that can control other people. And we also know that many of the celebrities at the very top, they are chipped as well. Just look at Al Roker and Eminem and some other ones and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So it's interesting, and this card even tells you, and they even admit that your government is listening into phone conversations, and with these chips they're able to spy on you even more. Massive surveillance control. I'm telling you, these cards are revealing so much truth to you, and I hope you see it with both your eyes open, because this card says Clone Arrangers, and I've probably gone over this card before, but the reason I like to go over it real quickly with you again is because, yes, cloning is real, and if you have not seen any of my cloning videos, I highly recommend you do, because this is some real stuff that goes on. This is some serious stuff that goes on, and like I said, you can ask childhood actors and actresses all about it. You can even ask the Hollywood industry and they'll tell you all about the cloning that goes on. Many of the celebrities that you see are in fact cloned, including the politicians who are at the very top. And there are cloning centers underground where all of this is taking place, not to mention underground cities where your government are working with the demons, who are also known as the fallen angels, who are disguising themselves as aliens to make all of this happen and to make all of this go on. And that is how they're able to clone, and that is how they're able to control the world, at least for now. And no, my friends, this is no conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy truth. This is a conspiracy fact. And this card says counterspell. Suddenly the candles flared brilliantly and the servitors scattered. Too late, the altar exploded and the roof began to sag. And when you look at this card and when you look at the eerie picture in it, it quickly reminds me of what programming, how everything they're trying to cast a spell on you any single way they can. When you turn on your TV, they call it TV programming for a reason, because they're programming your minds. They're the ones who are programming you. But that's not the only way, because did you know that medicines and the sorcery in it, the pharmacy is just sorcery. That's all it is. Why do you think there are all these side effects that comes with medicine? Because they don't really heal the cure, when they know darn well the cure is in natural remedies and natural herbs. Just ask Dr. Sebi, which is why they had to take Dr. Sebi out recently as well. And I quickly wanted to show you this card once again, because as you can see, it says F Nord all over it, because what? Disinformation. But it says cover of darkness. The schedule was tight, but they made the switch with minutes to spare. Their van was several blocks away when the red glow grew behind them and the screaming started. Their precious target was in fact safe. Play this card immediately after a gadget or artifact resource has been destroyed or discarded. It's not destroyed after all. You get it, because that's exactly what goes on. All of this cover up, it's just a big scheme. It's just a big scam. Never believe a word they're telling you, because they're good at lying. And speaking of cover up, what better way to cover things up than to burn it and shred it? And I know I've gone over this card in one of them, but I would just like to go over it again because this is the exact game of the Illuminati. Just ask all of these Illuminati hired archaeologists and pseudoscientists who are falsely telling you the theories of evolution and that old aliens are existent and they're come from other planets. It's all pseudoscience. It's all a great big cover up because they don't want you to know who your creator is. But it says play this card at any time a secret group has been successfully attacked. That attack becomes a failure. It requires an action from another secret group or your Illuminati, like a secret group just like the FBI or the NSA or the CIA who get paid to cover up information and falsify information. Just look at the alleged Holocaust, or should I say the Holo hoax, and you'll see exactly what I mean. Now, what I thought was most interesting about this card, and I've probably shown it before, is Count Dracula. But it seems like every time in these cards, and the Illuminati specifically throughout their programming and messaging, they always like to allude to full moons. I wonder why that's the case. And if anyone has anything to add on that regarding full moons, please do comment in the description box below, as well as any other cards that you've seen today or any other ones. But this one says Dracula has plus 10 on any direct attempt to control the vampires. The Count cannot be destroyed unless a magic group or card is used, but if destroyed, he is permanently dead. Nothing can bring him back. No magic artifact linked to the Count can ever be lost by him or taken away by any means, but if he dies, that artifact is lost forever. Interesting, because they even have a card that talks about artifacts and forgery, but they even have another card that's dedicated to the full moon, which reminds me of Black Knight Decoded from the Pepsi commercial that was released back in November of 2015 with the propaganda that said, by the next full moon, they will be ready for us. I wonder what they're trying to allude to. Your government and the elite have been getting ready for this card and have been preparing these things for a very long time because it says cyborg soldiers. Link this card to any violent group. The power of that group is doubled. If that group is destroyed, the cyborg soldiers are also lost, and this just so happens to be a gadget card. But the reason this card is so important and the reason this card needs very much attention to it is because this card is showing you what's exactly about to happen come martial law, is that they're not going to have real soldiers. They're going to have cyborg soldiers and drones. That's exactly what they're going to be doing, and that's exactly what they're getting ready for. Now, this card always tells you about the predictive programming that goes on in the Illuminati. Just look at the movies, but it says early warning. Play this card as a free move after any disaster is played. It gives the target a plus 10 to defend against that one disaster. And we know darn well that they've been doing a good job with the predictive programming. Just look at San Andreas and the San Andreas fault line. And what's even worse is that they try to tell you and they lie to you and say that, oh, these are early warnings, and oh, an earthquake hasn't gone off in this place for 200 or 300 years, so a giant earthquake is due in this specific area. No, they're the ones controlling it through HARP and CERN. I'm telling you, weather modification is a real thing. Your government has been doing this since the 1960s, if not earlier than that. But what they have to do, and what the elite and Satan and all of them have to do, is that they have to warn you about what they're going to do, and they have to tell you their plans ahead of time. And that's where that comes in with the New Madrid fault line and the San Andreas fault line and the Cascadia Rising 2016 with the alleged FEMA drill that they did back in June of 2016. They're literally telling you what's about to happen, but do you see it with both your eyes? And just like air magic, there is also earth magic. And this card says, play this card to help protect the place against a disaster. Using this card lets any magic groups in play use their action tokens to oppose the attack. And we know darn well how symbolic this all is for the elite and the Illuminati, because yes, they use nature worship and they worship nature in order to bring about what? Chaos and destruction, and then order out of chaos, which is where the phoenix rising out of the ashes comes from, including the palm tree as well. Now, when I saw this card, I immediately thought of all of the tampering that goes on, as well as all of the corruption that goes on in the marketplace and the economy as well. Because, yes, economics is also a big sham too. It's all a big scam. It's all a big sham because they know exactly what the market is going to be ahead of time. The Zionists are the ones who know what the market's going to be. They know the numbers, they configure the numbers before the market even opens on the same day, and they know the exact day that the market is going to collapse because they're the ones who are going to be collapsing it, but they're not going to tell you that. But they've already told you that it could be on a Friday. Just look at X-Files season 10. But this card says Eco Gorillas has +6 on direct attacks to destroy corporate groups. Increases resistance of all your groups by 2 against any attack made by or added by a corporate group. This card here says Eliza. Is it really alive or does it just think it is? Eliza can be linked to any computer group or to the network. That group gets an extra action token each turn. But if that extra action ever results in a roll of 11 or 12, Eliza has crashed. Discard this card and expose all of your hidden plot cards. No group may have more than one Eliza. Now it's interesting because in mainstream media alone, and what we've been seeing recently, that's all they've been showing is robotics and Siri and everything, and they're giving them names such as Sophie and many other ones. Could this be alluding to Eliza? Did they know about all of this ahead of time? And this card is called MTV, which is showing you what mind control and programming through the television. And mind you, this isn't just for children either with cartoons. It's also for adults when it comes to these reality TV shows and everything. They want you to think a certain way, not to mention how these TVs, they can give off frequencies and they have different frequencies that can be used for the government to control you and affect your mood. Have you ever felt angry after watching a television show or a program that had to do with people that were really angry in that TV show because they're trying to get a reaction from you any single way they can? And I know it may sound crazy, I know it may sound hard to believe, but trust me, this is what your government is doing. There's even government documentation to prove how they're doing all of these things. They're not going to call it mind control, but just look it up and you'll see exactly that that is their plan's depopulation. This card says Fickle Finger of Fate. Indecision is the key to flexibility, because if they can control your mind any single way they can, and if they can use it to control your mind, then they can control you and they can control what you're going to do, and they can predict what you're going to do because they know what you're going to do if you let them control your mind. But if you're awakened to the devices of the crafty, and if you know that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, then you know exactly their plans and you know that you don't have to be influenced by what they're doing. But it's important to stay awake and alert and aware to what's going on in the world around you. This card here says floating point error, and then it talks about software and how software executives agree it's not really a problem. All over the world, computers get weird. No computer group, no matter who owns it, may use its action tokens until the end of the present turn, except to defend itself against an attack. Alternatively, if this card is played immediately after a computer action, that action is canceled. This card requires an Illuminati or a computer action. Now, this reminds me of two things. The first thing is how your government and the Illuminati, they control the internet, they control computers, and they use it to spy on you through Facebook and Twitter and all those other social media programs, but also how they say point error and floating point error. Are they getting ready to feed us with the propaganda of, oh, a cyber attack? Is that what they're planning for? And is that what they're preparing for? Because that's exactly what they're going to do. And then they're probably going to blame it on Russia or blame it on China, more propaganda in order to justify it, to bring about world war, because that's exactly what they want to do. Even though your government is the one that's behind it and is doing it, they're the ones that are behind all of this, courtesy the Zionists and courtesy the fallen angels. It's a hierarchy, and that's exactly what they're doing. But they need you to think that Russia and China are behind all this, and they really need you to think that there's really a security threat, and there's a threat of cybersecurity, and there's a threat of cybersecurity in the U.S. domestic homeland, when this is simply not the case. Telling you so much truth on these cards. Now this one says forgery. Ha! You've been deceived by a clever duplicate, but we have the real thing. And you can even look at the Vatican and they'll tell you all about that, because they have all of the scriptures in the ancient scriptures, but they're keeping it hidden from us because everything they show you is in fact a forgery. Everything is twisted. You're the one living in a fantasy, but now that you're awakened to truth, you're no longer living in that fantasy. Now this card shows you the full moon card, and I know I was talking about it earlier, and I've probably talked about it in one of my other videos, but it says place an action token on each of your fanatic groups, whether it has one or not, and any other fanatic group in play that you want to benefit. This card may be played at any time it requires an action from your Illuminati. This card does not benefit groups which are suffering from any effect that prevents them from getting action tokens. And of course, it reminds us of what Dracula and the full moon propaganda that we see all over mainstream media. And the last card that we will be going over today is called the Fred Birch Society. The Fred Birch Society, spiritual leaders of right-wingers everywhere, counts as two conservative groups for any illuminated goal, though not for the basic goal. Now, when you read that carefully, you start to see something very interesting and suspicious indeed, because when it says two conservative groups for any illuminated goal, just like the illuminated goal of what? Democrat and Republican and conservative and liberal, because that's what they try to feed into your head, that, oh, they're two separate things, when they are actually the same thing. And like I said earlier, they give you that illusion that, oh, your vote counts and your voice really matters. But if you really believe that, then you are just like those who are pictured on this card, with your eyes and your ears and your mouth closed. But now that you are awakened to truth, and now that you're fully awakened to truth, you know better than that, and you're not going to fall for the schemes and the plans of the Illuminati, but rather you're going to seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha with all your heart, so you can be delivered from what's to come, because there are many of these cards that have not yet come to pass, such as martial law, World War III, and many others. But this is Truth Unveiled here, keeping you updated with truth always, and as always saying peace, love, and shalom.